Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah. So alhamdulillah, yesterday we began Imām Nawawi's work, al-Tibyan fi Adab Hamalat al-Quran. And today the hadith that we have to begin with is narrated by Abu Musa al-Ash'ari radiyallahu an. He stated that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that the likeness of a believer who recites the Quran is like that of a citron. Citron is like a large type of lemon. It's kind of larger version of a lemon. So Prophet ﷺ is comparing fruits to an individual who either recites the Quran, what type of individual recites the Quran, and the fragrance that comes out of that fruit or that vegetable. So he says that the likeness of a believer who recites the Quran is like that of a citron. Its scent is fragrant and its taste is delicious. So scent is nice and it tastes nice as well. That's for the believer. Then he keeps on going. He says the likeness of a believer who does not recite the Quran is like that of a date. It has no fragrance, but as we all know, mashallah, the date tastes amazing. No smell, no scent, but very fine taste. So that's the believer who does not recite the Quran. And they think about it, it's in their heart, they see it on their shelf, they bought copies of the Quran, I plan to read it, but never get a chance to. Go ahead and open it. And the Prophet ﷺ continues, he says, the likeness of a hypocrite who recites the Quran is like a water lily. Its scent is fragrant and its taste is bitter. So it looks nice, but tastes very bitter. And as we all know, the quality of the munafiqun is that they would outwardly try to seem as if they were part of the Muslims, but in reality inside they had no aspect of Islam within them. There's a reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states about them, إِنَّ الْمُنَافِقِينَ فِي الدَّرْكِ الْأَسْفَلِ مِنَ النَّارِ. That the munafiqun, the hypocrites, they are on the lowest of the low scales of ranks within Jahannam. The worst of ranks within Jahannam. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes their state in terms of salah, قَامُوا كُسَالَى يُرَاءُونَ النَّاسِ, that when they stand up for salah, they stand up, real lazy, I'm just on one foot, I'm not paying attention, I'm thinking about my business, or I'm thinking about this and that. قَامُوا كُسَالَى, they're very lazy when they start. يُرَاءُونَ النَّاسِ, and honestly the only reason that they're even there is to show people that, I'm from amongst the Muslims. But in reality they're not. That's not the case. So that's the case of the hypocrite who recites the Quran. They look like they're nice, but taste very bitter. The likeness of the hypocrite who does not even recite the Quran is like a bitter colocynth. It is scentless, it has no scent, and its taste is very bitter. So these are the different degrees that the Prophet ﷺ has discussed in terms of those individuals who obviously are either Muslim and recite the Quran, or munafiqun who recite the Quran or do not even recite the Quran. And we all know this is the beautiful month of Ramadan, and it's the month of the Quran. And it's through this Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives, as we talked about yesterday, gives our jasad, gives our body an aspect of a spirit and a soul. And without that, it feels like we are spiritless. We can we can work out, mashallah. I love going to the gym. We can work out, we can eat really good foods, we can eat healthy and all of that. But if we're not taking care of our spirituality, if we're not taking care of our recitation, if we're not taking care of all of the other aspects which bring our iman up, then all those other actions are rendered basically useless. It all starts and ends with our iman and our level of Islam. And we'll see that with the next hadith as well. Well, Abu Umama al-Bahili radiyallahu anh, he stated that I heard the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam say that recite the Quran, for on the day of judgment For on the day of judgment, it will come to intercede for its companion. It will come as an intercession for the companion, the individual who recites the Quran. As we all know, on the day of judgment, all of our actions will have a form. They'll have different forms. And we'll be able to recognize those actions through the forms that they'll have. And the Quran will come in its form. And those individuals, those of us that recite it, those of us that implement it, those of us that practice upon it, we don't, our tongues will not. We don't need to speak. We will not speak. Our limbs will speak on our behalf. That this individual, he walked towards this deed. This individual, when it was Ramadan, when it was Asr time, he came to the masjid. This individual, when it was came time for Taraweeh, he prayed Taraweeh. This individual, when he had the opportunity to sit and recite the Quran, he spent time with me. So we don't need to, on that day, we're not going to speak. We don't need to speak. Because everything else is going to speak on our behalf. And the Quran is one of those words, the Quran is one of those books that's going to speak on our behalf as well. So it's going to come as an intercessor for us as well. Ibn Umar radiallahu anh, he stated that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that there is no envy except concerning two people. لا حسد إلا في اثنتين. That number one, a person whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given the Quran and he conforms to it throughout the day and throughout the night. All he thinks about, day and night, Quran, Quran, Quran. And the individual number two, as that individual who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given wealth and he spends it day and night. He thinks about ways, how can I use this halal income that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed me with? How can I use it for the sake of Allah? In the morning and at night. Quran in the morning and at night. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, time and time again, we see, especially in the month of Ramadan, gives us many times to do extra credit opportunities. Like we have the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man qara harfan min kitabillah falahu hasana, wal hasanatu bi ashri amthaliha." That whoever recites one harf from the Quran, they get one good deed. And every good deed is multiplied by 10. And if we're talking about Ramadan, that's multiplied even more. And then the Prophet ﷺ gave an example. Right? We started a few days ago with Taraweeh, alif, lam, mim, 3 huruf. Prophet ﷺ said, alif harfun, wa lam harfun, wa mim harfun. Every single letter, whether you understand the meaning of it, or whether you don't even understand the meaning of it, like alif, lam, mim, you get 10 good deeds. He said, alif is 1 harf, lam is 1 harf, mim is 1 harf. For each one of these huruf, you get 10 good deeds. And this is through the rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is through the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Time and time again, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is stressing that this is through these timeless words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through the kalam of Allah, that we have sakina. لِيَطْمَئِنَّ قَلْبِي, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states. It's through these words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we have itmi'nan in our heart. We all know many individuals who make maybe double, triple, quadruple of what we make. But sakina doesn't come from that. That's an obligation. We are mukallaf. We are, that's a necessity that all of us need to do. We have to support ourselves. We have to support our family in terms of financial wealth. That's important, yes. But we all know that's not the end all be all. That is just money, money, money. That's not it. That's an aspect of it. Don't get me wrong, that's an aspect of it. But it's not the end. And if we want true sakina within our heart, if we want true tranquility within our heart, it starts with the kalam of Allah. It starts with the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And these kalam that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with, this is timeless. It's not for a particular time, for when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was there in Mecca or in Medina, when the Sahaba were there. It's not for that specific time only. We know that the Nabi that was sent to us, he was until the end of time. And the words that he was given, that's also for until the end of time. Okay. And we'll end with this last hadith where the Prophet ﷺ, and this is for us, especially, there's some youngsters here and those of us that have children, that the Prophet ﷺ, he stated in a hadith narrated by Mu'adh ibn Anas that whoever recites the Quran and acts according to what it contains, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will adorn his parents with a crown on the day of Qiyamah. Its radiance is more beautiful than the radiance of the sun in the abode of this world. So, what do you presume the reward will be for the individual who acts upon it? What do you think the reward will be for the individual who acts upon it? If this is the reward for the parents of the children that read the Quran and act upon the Quran, what do you think the individual? What do you think? If you think this is the reward for the parents that of those children who read the Quran, what do you think the reward will be for the individuals who actually act upon it themselves? That's never ending. It's never ending. There are certain actions in the Sunnah where the Prophet ﷺ specifies the reward for them. And there are certain actions where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet ﷺ says, you know what? I'm just going to say you're going to get a lot of reward. You're not going to understand really how much reward that is. Just like how we talked about yesterday, tijaratan lan tabur. It's like a never-ending, unperishable gain. Same thing what the Prophet ﷺ said, narrating from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, talking about fasting. As-sawmu li wa ana ajzi bih. That fasting is for me. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, fasting is for me, and I am going to reward the individual who fasts. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to read the Quran, practice upon the Quran, and propagate the Quran. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al-mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.